Hello, welcome back. This is the second video of my solo V-Rising brutal run. If you want to see what we have done so far, you can check out the first video, but the gist is that I have adjusted some settings, loot's turned up a little bit, durability loss is off, the standard units are at the default plus 40% damage, and also currently the V-Bloods are on the default brutal settings, so I believe it's plus 70% damage. Near the end of Act 1, I keep brutal difficulty on, but I do turn down the damage multiplier a bit. I will talk all about that when I do it in the run, but until then, bosses are at plus 70%. In the last episode, we started the run, set up a little temporary base, and defeated the Alpha Wolf, Rufus, Keely, and Errol. We've got our waygate up so we can teleport around, we've got leather, copper, some research underway, and we've just got to the servant coffins but haven't actually acquired any servants just yet. So fresh from my win against Errol, I went to discover another waypoint on my way home and pilfered some bandit camps on the way there. I would really recommend Chaos Volley as your first chaos spell. It does a lot of damage, has good range, and I've also seen it used when soloing a lot of the bosses, like other people seem to really like this move. I figured there's a reason for that. I did a bit more research while I was at home, and I stashed all the loot that I picked up. There is something very satisfying for me about using the auto transfer and having all your storage chests organized with specific stuff inside. It's a silly thing, but I just think it's really good. It's done really well. I did a bit of crafting with some of my boss unlocks. I made a crossbow. This is actually, I think, the first crossbow I've ever used in V-Rising. I wanted to test it out, so I went out and I fought the corpse pile that lives outside my house. I was able to get it down, so that'll be nice for a few minutes, but ultimately these things respawn after a day or two, so it's not really worth trying to keep the front yard clear for any length of time. The next part of the main quest was to get a servant, so I started prowling the bandit camps looking for a good one. Typically 90% and up is what you want. They like glow red and they're easy to see, but they are a little bit rare, and sometimes I find a ton of them and sometimes I don't find any. And today I was not finding any, so I killed some of the humans to clear them out so they would respawn. And then at some point I did give up my search and I literally just grabbed the next best one out of the next group I ran into, which ended up being at 24%. I named him Newbie because he was not very good. Not worth it keeping him long term, but I wanted to get the quest done. So I grabbed him and I stuffed him into a coffin like you do with your good friends. The servants take a little while to cook after you get them, so I had some time to kill. I went around looking for a better servant and also looting the camps, trying to get some books to advance my research. Just grinding a little bit, I was able to unlock the Merciless Copper Hammer. The only merciless tool I've had before this was the spear. I don't really like spears. I probably haven't given them a fair chance, but it's the one weapon I just have no desire to use. I don't typically like spears in games, so we're sticking with the hammer. The merciless tools all need whetstones, which I did have some of from my looting. You can loot these from the humans in certain places before you can build them or before you can craft them. So that's one of the reasons I've been going out and doing a lot of looting. I tootled around my house a little bit, getting together some better gear. I would prefer, ideally to have one cohesive set of gear, but because the research is going so slow, I ended up just making whatever gear I had unlocked so that I could have a full set of the upgraded gear. Because I know that your gear level is taken into account when calculating damage. So if you're closer or above the level of a V-Blood, they will do less damage, I think. Or maybe you do more damage? I'm not quite sure how the calculation works, I just know that it is part of the calculation. Since I had some time, I farmed some resources and built a forge room onto my castle. I had unlocked the forge flooring, so that lets you have a little boost. Your crafting uses fewer materials if you have the forge flooring in the room. I did a little bit more building, keeping the teleporter room as sort of the center of the castle and building the other rooms around it. I went out for another little raiding session and also to unlock the waypoint near Pelora, the Fae lady. I don't remember her full title. I happened upon a 100% brute just in the road. I managed to get him dominated, tamed, whatever, and then I immediately died to the sun after getting kind of stuck on a tree. And apparently your dominated servants just disintegrate when that happens. I've never seen that before, so that was a little bit sad. I also don't think I've ever had a servant brute before, and I still don't, so we'll see if I get one later. Oh well, you win some, you lose some. It would have been one heck of a trek back home anyway because I was all the way across the map. Next, I went to fight Grayson the Armorer. This guy's thing is that he throws down these caltrops, and you have to use the armor stands to get a shield to get rid of them, so you can actually move around without being slowed and taking damage constantly. He also summons adds periodically and does some big spinny slash moves and a grapple. So there's a lot going on here. You really need to be able to move around so you can dodge these moves. And this is where this fight started to get a little bit harder. There's a lot more going on with this one. He has a lot of different moves to watch out for, and they work together really well. So like the slow makes you more susceptible to the grapple puts you in range for the spinning move, and so it's just like a lot of things you have to watch out for. I decided to get a little more gear together before attempting it again. So I just got my loot and went home to do more research. And I got 3 out of the 4 Shadewalker pieces. I also built the altar that lets you redo your spell points, thinking that the Chaos Volley would be better for this than what I had. I also grabbed the crossbow again, thinking that a little bit of range would help, and also the AoE skill to help with the ads. It was kind of my theory. On my second run, I made the fatal mistake of using too many of the armor stands too early. I, for some reason, thought they would respawn. I don't know why I thought that, because there are 4 of them, and they, if they respawn, they'd probably just put 1. So I used them too early. I got overwhelmed by caltrops because I couldn't clear them. Daytime was really annoying for some of these bosses too, because as I was waiting for night to happen again so I could go into the outdoor arena, all the mobs outside the boss arena would respawn, so the next time I had to run back, I would have to re-kill all the mobs. I would love it if games like this would just be a little bit kinder with your time. Like if you have a boss fight that is meant to be kind of hard, just let me respawn outside the boss arena. I don't know. I know this is all intentional. I know they've done it this way on purpose to like add stakes, to add to the challenge. But in my ideal world, I don't have to clear trash every time I want to fight a boss again. At least not after like 5 minutes, which I feel like is how frequently the mobs respawn in V Rising. Third try, I held off on the armor stands a little longer, and I did take some extra damage because of it. This time I did okay, especially considering I left a lot of the caltrops up, but I didn't have a good eye on my health and accidentally ran in for an attack when I really should have healed or used the armor stands or something. Fourth try, I just kept getting hit by his grapple again and again. In the end, that was just a bad run. Fifth try, I did better dodging the grapple. It wasn't perfect, but I managed to dodge it most of the time. The extra ad was up for nearly the whole fight and got a few little hits on me that dragged me down. In the end, I almost got him. I got him down to such a tiny sliver of health that you couldn't actually see his health bar with your human eyes. But I apparently needed just one more hit because he didn't go down. Sixth try, another death. I'll just skip through that one. Not very interesting. Seventh try. This attempt was a lot more clean. I'm getting the caltrops cleared. I'm dodging the ad when it comes up. And it's really cool to watch these back when doing sort of the voiceover for this video because I can see myself getting better. Like I can see myself learning the fight here, getting better at dodging and predicting the moves. I knew it was a good run when I got him to half health. The health orbs popped out and I didn't even need them. I was fine. I do still get a little greedy near the end when I can see that the boss is low, and I need to try and control that because it gets me killed. But this time it worked out, and I got Grayson the Armorer down. He gives workshop floors and more notably whetstone. I basically had enough whetstone because of my bandit raids, but I know I'm gonna need more. V-Rising does a pretty decent job of making materials useful throughout the run, It's not perfect. There are some things that are just really not useful later on, but a lot of the things they are used in more advanced like crafting recipes later. So it's going to be a good thing to be able to start making whetstones early. I built another room into my castle for the workshop and moved all the workshop stuff into there. Did a little bit more building, sorted out my storage chests. The castle's really coming along. And this is still sort of the temporary castle, so I'm gonna do like a proper build a little bit later in the run once I decide where I want to set up my like HQ basically. Next, it was time to fight Goreswine for real, but I was a little scared because they wrecked me so bad the first time I encountered them. I did a little jaunt through some of the nearby bandit camps to see if I could find any good servants and collect a bit of paper. I got a little more research unlocked, and then went shopping with my copper coins to get even a little bit more research unlocked. I was really trying to get the full warlock armor set. That's kind of what I was hoping for, to get like a lot of spell power, but the game was not being kind with its random rolls, so I settled for half warlock and half marauder. A little bit of spell power, a little bit of health, I think is what that does, or maybe that one's weapon speed. I probably should have pulled that information up, but I made some shiny new axes. I really like the axes because they feel like the slashers, and you can't get the slashers until later. And so I like to use these early on. And then I went out the door to fight Goreswine. I know that Goreswine can wander throughout the map. I'm not sure if this fight is easier to do outdoors or if it's easier in the controlled environment of the cemetery. But they were just in the cemetery when I found them. I passed Lidia the Chaos Archer on the way in, a little foreshadowing for the attentive viewer, and then I found Goreswine in the cemetery. The first attempt at Goreswine was really rough because they had all their ads with them still. There were some ads outside her group that were close enough to aggro, so I started by killing the ads and then running out to reset. This is a strategy I haven't used as much as I probably should, to sort of clear things out and start fresh by resetting the boss. But it works well, especially if you're like right at the edge of what is feasible in terms of gear. And now for the real first attempt. Goreswine does a lot of big stinky green explosions and some little stinky green bullets. It's hard to dodge these poison circles if you aren't really familiar with when they happen and like the pattern it sort of makes. But my suggestion here is to just keep moving and prioritize damage avoidance over getting hits in. A lot of the boss fights honestly are like this, where if you can just stay alive longer, you're going to be better off than if you try to do a lot of damage up front. The green circles here do go away after a bit, so there's not really a consequence to letting the fight go a little bit long. It's not going to like fill up with AoEs or anything like that. And the poison can really hurt if it gets you. It does like a little bit of a dot after you get hit, and there's not a lot you can do to recover from it, which I'll mention here. I haven't really talked about how health and healing works in V Rising, because honestly I only understand it a little bit. Basically, when you're in combat, you can't just heal all the way up with health potions or with blood mend. There are limitations on how much you can heal. If you look at your health bar when you've been damaged, there's a section of it that's a different color, and that's how much you are allowed to heal with potions or with blood mend until you're out of combat. And I'm not totally sure what the rule is for this. Maybe it's a percentage of the damage that you take you can heal up. Either way, it's relatively small. For me, it's very slow to heal with the health potion, and the healing is interrupted if you take damage, which I just think that's a bit mean. I don't know. It's a lot of constraints, and so because of all these things that can go wrong, it's just not really worth it for me to use health potions, especially when you're solo and the bosses are always paying attention to you. With all that said, I actually got Goreswine on the first try. Woohoo! I had literally 1 health point at the end of it, so I was glad to have them down. I was really worried that would be the one that I got really stuck on. When I was playing with friends on the slightly more difficult server, Goreswine was kind of the first boss that people really needed help with, so I was worried that that would be a sticking point. Also, they are a critical boss to get down because they unlock the ring that you need to make the better rings to boost your gear score. You can't make the more advanced rings without that first one. So some of the bosses you can kind of skip if they're too hard, or if the fight isn't meshing with you, you can skip them and come back. But I would say Goreswine is kind of on that critical path. As I was leaving the cemetery, remember the foreshadowing? Lidia was right outside, so I figured, why not? I didn't really remember anything about her moves, so I just jumped in and learned as I went. Fortunately, she doesn't really do anything crazy. There's a lot of big purple arrows, some attacks that leave puddles of fire on the ground. The archer bosses all kind of have very similar movesets, so even if you haven't fought all of them before, they are archers. They shoot arrows at you. They rain arrows down on you. It's not, it's not that crazy. She also got distracted by some skeletons who chipped away at her health a little bit. And this brings me to my next bit of advice for solo V-Rising. This isn't possible with every boss, but a lot of the units in the world will attack each other, especially if you can get them caught in like an AoE or something so they aggro onto the other units. So keep your eye out for units near bosses that are opposed to each other. Some humans walking by, some skeletons walking by, some wolves, maybe a treant or like a corpse pile or something. I got a couple of boss kills by either getting lucky, most of the time it was not intentional, or intentionally leading another unit or a boss to some like wolves or something. And it's totally fair. This is how the game works. Lidia I got mostly on my own though, and I did get her down first try. And at this point, my confidence is deceptively high. I'm feeling pretty good with the first try on Goreswine and the first try on Lidia. I'm thinking, okay, I can do this. I can do this game on Brutal. Lidia unlocks the Mimic that eats your old gear, leatherworking, a bag, and longbows. I made a longbow to try out. I'm using this run to kind of explore all the different bits of V-Rising, and the longbow actually does really come in handy later. A lot of the later game bosses are easier to fight with a good ranged weapon, so we'll see more of that for sure. Next, I fought Nibbles the Putrid Rat. This is one of my favorite bosses in the game just because I just think it's a little silly. Rat form that you get from defeating Nibbles is very cute. I love rat form. I don't use it as much as I could, but I like to have it. And Nibbles the Putrid Rat is a fight you can do from the comfort of your own home. It's a simple fight. You do it from the plague sewer thing. You will want probably some kind of AoE. Nibbles will attack directly and then also summon a bunch of little rats to fight you. It'll sort of vanish for a while and then come back. And I realized when I said I hadn't soloed any V-Rising bosses before, I'm realizing that I lied, because I have soloed Nibbles in every run so far just because I could, because he's easy enough, and you do kind of have to do it in your own space anyway, and it always just felt like a pain to invite people over just to fight a big rat, so I've just done it by myself. After Nibbles, I decided to finish up the row of bosses that I was on and go after Clive. Clive is in this little mining camp. They love explosives here, and there's explosive bosses all over the ground that you can use, or they can kill you if you're not careful. So you'll want to make sure you're watching for these big red circles and getting out of them. You can also intentionally blow up an explosive if there are enemies near it to do a little bit of damage. I cleared out the surrounding mobs as well as I could and started to fight Clive. Now Clive almost exclusively throws explosives. He's kind of like a big version of the little guys in Dunley Farms that have the bombs. So it's mostly a matter of avoiding the big red circles something I would say I'm pretty good at given my years of WoW experience. Most WoW bosses are just dodging circles. He also seems to do an effect that burns you. I'm not sure if that's avoidable, but it didn't seem to hurt me too bad, so I didn't worry about it. Near the end of the fight, I got a little bit stuck in some of the explosions and nearly died, but I managed to kill Clive just in time. So there's another boss fight completed with like 1 health point left. And with Clive down, I finished looting the mine, got some fire blossoms, some sulfur, a book or two, and headed back home again. Clive unlocks the alchemy table, which makes it a lot easier to prepare for some of these fights, because you can make some potions. Definitely make use of the buff potions, they are super helpful. I also planted a little garden with some of the seeds that I had. Just blood roses to start, and then I'll hopefully get some more seeds planted later. The next boss is the Fisherman, who I love because he gives us the fishing pole, and I love fishing. The fishing in V-Rising, I will say, is just kind of okay. It's not really that exciting, but the fish themselves are pretty important later because you need them for your prisoners to keep their misery from getting too high. Finn the Fisherman is pretty easy to fight with a group, but it's much harder to do solo because he summons a lot of ads, and when you're solo, all those ads are focused on you. His whole deal is that he will fish up these ads and each one will attack in a different way. The piranhas will kind of chase you down and do melee damage. The blowfish, I think, will explode. And then the most dangerous that you really have to watch out for is the sea serpent that he summons in the middle here, because it will just continuously blast you with ice beams. Just a lot, like you can barely dodge them. He also is outdoors, so the sun is a concern. There are little awnings you can hide under if you're really strapped for time, but it's a big limiter on your movement if you're out here in the daytime trying to fight Finn. So waiting till night is probably a good idea. The best strategy I found for fighting this guy was to just continuously be circling around the dock, especially since the serpent's going to be in the middle. It's going to be firing those ice beams. If you just keep circling, in most cases the snake's attacks will just barely miss, and you can fire off spells until it's dead, and then hit Finn whenever you're near him. On the first try, I did die. I just got overwhelmed by the ads. The snake's moves also do a chill, so if you get hit by one, you are slowed, which makes it a problem to dodge all the other shit that's going on. So it's important, again, in this fight to focus on dodging the attacks more so than getting in your hits, because you gotta survive. At this point, I am also still stubbornly using the hammer and sort of whichever moves I want to use instead of really thinking about the fight itself. We don't have a ton of spells unlocked either, so there's not a lot of options. But I do know I just wasn't really strategizing at this point, and I probably would have had an easier time if I did. The second try of this fight went really, really long because I was trying so hard to avoid taking damage. Slowly using Chaos Volley whenever it's up and constantly moving. I got the sea serpent down with like 1,000 piranhas and blowfish circling. In the end, my patience paid off. I got him down, and now I can make a fishing pole and go fishing. And also be careful after the fight because for me, the blowfish were still up, and it would suck to, defeat the boss and then get hit by one of the exploding blowfish before you can drink the V blood. With Finn the Fisherman down, I just have one more row of 3 bosses and then the final boss of Act 1, which is Quincy the Bandit King. And then he unlocks Iron, which effectively unlocks Act 2. It makes it feasible for you to get into Act 2. This is also the point where the default settings of brutal mode start to get to be a little bit too much. But we'll talk all about that in the next video. We'll go through my struggle. But we're gonna stop here for today on a high note. We got a few more bosses down and we're building up our capabilities here slowly. And this is what I really like. This is what I find so compelling about V-Rising is just the progression is like carefully done and it feels very compelling. You always know what you need to do next because you can craft certain things and then you can also kind of see, oh, I need this thing to craft this other thing. And so you can see what the bosses give you, you know where you need to go next, and it just leads you in a very satisfying way through the game. And you can see as you're getting stronger, you're unlocking new moves, and your character is just getting a little bit more powerful. I don't know, I think it's really well done, and I think this is why I keep doing more V-Rising runs, is just because I crave this feeling of progress, and V-Rising delivers. But that's all we have for today. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see me struggle with the end of Act 1, because we'll be back soon with another video, and I hope to see you there. Bye bye!